Well, we told you moments ago that the Ijebu monarch, the Awujale of Ijebuland, Oba Sikiru Kayode Adetona, has been buried at his private residence in Ijebuland, Ogun State. Joining us to speak on the burial of the late Awujale is Arise international correspondent Adefemi Akinsoya, who has just returned from Ijebuland. Adefemi, great to have you on the news. I know you're also a daughter of the soil, as we say here. Just tell us about the man, the monarch. He ruled for more than 6 decades, about the longest reigning monarch in Nigeria. How much influence did the Awujale wield politically and traditionally, and what does this death really mean?
Firstly, good evening, Adesua. Good evening, Ngozi. It's always lovely to hear your voices. I'm so happy that we're getting an opportunity to speak, albeit for not the greatest. Thank you so much. So yes, it was quite a historic day. I was about to say evening, but it was indeed the whole day. After we finished on the morning show, we did travel down to Ijebuland so that we could be, of course, amongst the well-wishers and, of course, the mourners, just to, bask in the ambience and, of course, pay our respects to the dearly departed Awujale. It was quite a spectacle. So initially, when we're looking at this burial, it wasn't absolutely, it adhered to Islamic and to traditional cultural rites, but it was also quite modern in the sense that the Awujale himself made it clear, and he had put the efforts in place in terms of changing certain parts of, like the for lack of a better term, the royal constitution, to allow a sitting monarch to really dictate how he wants his own burial to go. And he played a huge role in exactly how he wanted it to go. So when we're looking at the venue, for example, it being a private residence, that's something that he specifically wanted. He wanted to be buried in a mausoleum on his private grounds right next to his parents. So these things are, of course, traditional in terms of the background of them, but very modern for a king who had been on the throne for so long, to take control over how he wants his journey into the afterlife to go. So when immediately we're looking at the impact and the influence of a man, you just felt it. First and foremost, Ijebuland naturally is quite a quiet and sleepy town, but you really felt as though this is a town in mourning when we entered this morning, because the main markets were closed down. Now, we did already know that as a sign of respect in the town, that the bigger markets, like New Market, for example, would be closed, and perhaps Awujale, which is a main market, depending on what part of this town you're in, it was believed that that market was going to be open, but that was also closed. Again, just to show the amount of shock that had really hit the community, because, with the king being a Muslim, we do know that burials happen very, very quickly. So you almost don't have any time to process the loss. Immediately you go straight into the burial rites. And when it's the burial of a king, the scale is so much grander. So when you're talking to the everyday person in Ijebuland about how they feel about, the king dying, it is genuinely a sense of sadness, because he is a king that was very much loved. He was a king of the people, and immediately his absence is going to be felt. And so when we're looking ahead to the future of whom the next Awujale will be, they are going to have huge shoes to fill in. They're going to be sitting on the throne that for many Ijebu sons and daughters would only have been taken up on by Oba Sikiru Kayode Adetona, because, as you rightfully said, he was on the throne for more than 65 years. He is by far the longest reigning Ijebu monarch, but as you've also said, the longest monarch in Nigerian cultural history. So it is very, very evident that his is a loss that is going to be felt. And when we're looking at the amount of dignitaries who were present at the burial, of course, you had the likes of Ogun State Governor Prince Dakwa Abiodun, but also you had a series of past governors from Ogun State, the likes of Senator Otumba Gbenga Daniel, Olusegun Shoba, as well as Ibikunle Amosun, all of them on ground. But also, of course, Lagos State Governor was there. President Tinubu was represented by, I believe it's Minister Oyebanji, and as well as Bosun Tijani, all of them there. So much dignitaries. And then when you're looking at the Ijebu Traditional Council, they were all there in strong esteem, members of Ijebu ruling houses and royal families. And also you did have Aliko Dangote, which is quite significant because he spoke at the burial prayer and he talked about how the relationship he had with the dearly departed monarch was something that definitely he kept very close to his heart. Everyone spoke so highly about him. And speaking highly, Prince Dapo Abiodun's speech was quite poignant. It was very, very beautiful, so profound. He talked about how, of course, the death of Awujale came very much as a surprise, as he was already in shock. He was in London and he was planned to stay in London because, of course, the former president had died. But when he found out from the Queen of Ijebuland that, you know, her husband had gone to meet with the ancestors, he had to immediately look at how he could get back into Nigeria in time, and then, of course, into Ijebu-Ode. And, you know, these things happen against a very tight timing because, according to Islamic rites, when someone dies, they have to be buried before the sun sets the following day. So again, just a lot of helter-skelter, but just to show how much respect and how well he was revered, it just showed itself in the hundreds upon hundreds of people that descended on his private residence. Just a huge spectacle. For me personally, it was quite an emotional feeling to be there and just to see really a shift happening because he has been on the throne for so long. As I said, he is the only king many of us have ever known. So now, as people look to the future, there is definitely a hope that whomsoever should ascend to the throne next will do so in a peaceful, in a calm way that will continue on the legacy of a king of the people that sought only to uplift the Ijebu name and the Ijebu culture. And we see examples of that over and over again, most especially with the growth of the Ojude Oba festival, how that's become a global entity, drawing in international crowds year by year by year. So when we're looking at his legacy, it's definitely one of respect, of fortitude, of integrity, but also the effort to take something so small, a town that sometimes many people hadn't ever heard about beyond, you know, ridiculous stereotypes, and really uplift this very small town into a global name. As always, I'm proud to be a daughter of Ijebu-Ode, and today, after witnessing that burial, that pride just grew stronger.
I can imagine. I mean, Adefemi, I mean, we could give you all night to talk about, you know, the late great monarch, a very highly respected monarch, just like you have, you know, stated. But he was also described as a fearless Democrat who was not afraid to speak truth to power. Speak to us about the high points of his reign, you know, the key things that actually stood this monarch out. Very quickly, if you can.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you talked about it. Absolutely. So he was very different in the sense that he did have very, you know, overt political undertones. He talked a lot about politics and how he played a very active role in state, but also politics at the federal level. He was a friend to many different presidents in Nigeria. And then, of course, for people who wanted to become governor in Ogun State, it made sense to be on the Awujale's good side because of the influence that he held. But he did also have some troubles. We talked about this very early this morning that, you know, then Governor Olabisi Onabanjo did try and depose the Awujale in the early 1980s. It went all the way to, you know, an arbitration. And it was, funnily enough, on the 4th of May, Friday the 4th of May, 1984, that the Awujale was able to overcome this attempt to depose him. He was rightfully reinstalled. And because of that, he ended up, shared the story this morning, that because of the support that my paternal grandmother had given him during this trial in terms of him trying to stay in power, when he was able to overcome and be installed and confirmed as the Awujale, he told my grandmother that my mother, who was giving birth that very same day, that should she have a boy, she should name that boy Ade Jubalo, which is Yoruba for a crown that is too great to be taken away. And if she had a girl, the baby should be called called Adeshewa. And of course, my older sister is called Adeshewa. So just to, again, show the levels throughout the generations of Ijebu people that had this real tie with this person who was not only a traditional ruler, but clearly someone who had a lot of political prowess as well.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Ijebu is proud of you, just as we are. Our eyes is proud of you. Well done, and thank you so much for the detailed coverage. Adefemi Akinsanya is our international correspondent. She is also the daughter of the soil from Ijebuland.